Moving on, so now I want to have the next transition between the walk and the run, and this would be different from the previous one. The previous transition was basically the same clip, it was just that we made two loops in that clip. So we had made it idle, and then we made a walk, and then we made a transition within it. But now, if we look at the clips, the run, the run is an idle to run, and the same thing with the walk is an idle to walk. And we don't want to do a lame blend between these two. So what we can do, we have this extra clip that has an idle, walk, run, walk, and idle. So I'm going to use that as an intermediate clip. So let's go down to the transition again. So let's create a new transition. And then I'm going to choose the walk, and then to this walk, run, idle. And we can see immediately we get a line there. And let's turn on the guide geometry. So what I want now from this clip, I want to have this one when it's walking, just before it starts running. So around here maybe, something like that. Just going to select this, I don't have that one distracting us. Something like this, and just something like that. And then I'm going to put this into 161, 162. And just to see, so that works, I'm going to go down here. I'm going to take the walk, and I'm going to take the walk, run, idle. And you can see it work. The staff is going up a little bit, so I'm just going to make a longer blend. So if we do that again, still have a little bit, but it's not as extreme. Okay, so now I just need to do a couple of windows for this. So let's go back here. I'm just going to select this guy, turn that off. I'm going to do 4 windows, I think. So turn off here, so 161 here. I'm going to keep my 8 blend there. And then I'm going to, that seems okay, so 187. And then I'm going to continue here, same thing, 161 and 8. I'm going to turn off the guide geometry and turn it on here. So something like that, 211. And finally, something like that, 236, 237. So now I have a couple of windows, so I can make a transition from the walk into the transition clip. But then, of course, I want to have a transition to the run. And that is easy enough. We just go back, and we need to add another transition here. So here is that. This time I'm going to go from walk, run, idle, 1H to the run, 1H. Now you can see we have a line through the idle to everything up to the run. Same thing, I need to turn off guides from this guy and turn them on here instead. So let's see what we have on this one. Maybe something like that. And then, so now I just need to sync that up with this guy. Let's see that from the side view. Not too bad. Awesome. I can do it 6 frames blend there too. And turn that off and just specify the transition range. Kkoudini is clever enough, so now I can actually tell it if it's in an idle, I can tell it, I'll go to a run. And then it will just go through these clips to get to this run. So I can show that by going in here. And then I can put this to an idle. And then we're going to put this to a run. Remember, I don't have a direct transition between these two clips. But just because there's a path that Kkoudini can follow, this is enough. So if we look at this, we'll stand here. We'll start walking, and then it will start running. Excellent. So I'm just going to do the same thing with the 2-hand clips. You don't have to see me doing it all over again. And then let's go to the simulation and see how we can trigger transitions. Okay, let's try our transitions out. And just before we move on, I have created some more transitions. So before we only made the transitions for the 1-hand, but now I've done it for the 2-hand grip as well. And you can see that I've stacked 2 clip transition graphs together. And you can do that by plugging into this third port. The reason that I do this is just to keep it a bit cleaner, and it allows me to do one group of clips at a time. Especially if you have a lot of clips, it's a good practice to keep them separated. A thing to note though, if you want to do the same thing with the clip properties, you can't just stack them in a similar way, just because after the clip properties is done with the data, it's just sending out points, and the clip properties of course need to have the agency in to read the clips. So with clip properties, you need to merge them together. Just a thing to remember. Okay, so let's go to the crowd sim. I'm just going to turn on the terrain, and let's go into the crowd sim. So the first thing we need to do if we're going to do transitions is that we need to tell them that there is a transition graph, and we do that through the crowd object. So you can hear, and then it's here when it says clip transition graph, you just point to it, like so. Let's start doing an idle to a walk. We have the walk already. Remember, I doubled the speed, so I'm going to take that down. And then I'm going to copy this and make it idle. So I'm going to call this idle, and then I'm going to merge it together, like so. And then I'm going to change these guys to idle 1H and idle 2H. A cool thing with clips using a transition graph in Kkoudini is that it will make sure that in a state with multiple clips, only clips that are compatible with the current clip will be selected. So for instance, if the agent is playing the idle 1H that only has a transition to walk 1H, it will automatically pick that clip in the walk state. Oh, I can remove this little underscore here. So cool. Another thing I'm going to do just to make it easier to see what's going on, I'm going to drop down a pop color. They are in the idle, they're going to be yellow. And then if they are in the walk, they're going to be blue. And you can see because walk was the default state, so it's starting out with walk. But I want them to start with an idle, so I'm going to go back to the crowd source, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to type idle instead. And let's go back to the crowd sim. And now you can see that they're all yellow and standing in this idle. So let's trigger these guys into a walk. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to drop down in geometry. I'm going to call these triggers. And then I'm going to create a sphere. I'm going to make that a polygon mesh. I'm going to make a transform. And let's show the crowd too. If we start over here somewhere, I'm going to keyframe this. And then around here, I'm just going to drag it through the whole thing. I'm going to keyframe that. So now it's just going through them. And what I want to do is, like, as soon as an agent is inside the sphere, it's going to get triggered into the walk. Let's call this walk trigger. And let's go in here. So to get this to work, we're going to need a trigger. So I'm going to drop down a crowd trigger. And I'm going to call this idle to walk. And then we need a transition that gets triggered by this trigger. And then we need a crowd transition. I'm going to plug this into that, and then plug it into the last port here. And the thing to note though is that if you use this in its default state, it's just going to do a blend between the clips. And then you can specify how the blend will be with this thing here. But for us, we have transitions. So we're going to check this use clip transition graph. And then of course we need to take the input, would be an idle, and the output would be a walk. And here in the trigger, by default, it is an object bounce, which is what we want. We want it to be triggered when it gets inside that sphere. And then I'm going to point to that sphere, out walk trigger. And you can see we get this template in here. For this, I'm going to choose continuous, so it keeps checking if they are inside or not. So let's try this out. So play. You see it goes over. They're turning into blue, so we know that they are in the walk state. Perfect. So far, so good. One thing we can see that the agents are clumping together. And the reason they're clumping together is because the force is too strong on the path. What I can do is I can go to this path variance and just loosen it up a little bit by allowing them to deviate a bit more. So I'm going to put this to 5, and then let's do that again. I can see it's much better. So far so good. So next thing we're going to do is to find a way to trigger them into a run state. So now let us make a new transition. So what I want to do is from a walk to a run. So first of all we need to add a run as a state. And in this case I want the run to be basically the same thing as a walk. With that I mean I want them to avoid obstacle, I want them to follow the path. The only thing I wouldn't want is the color. So let's copy this. And then these two things I want, let's put a merge over these guys. Because as you might recall, the only thing important is whatever is between these guys. So in this way they're sharing the same behavior. The only thing I didn't want was the color, so I want to have a separate color. So let's put that to red. I'll call this run. I'm going to go up here, and then I'm going to do that. Run, and run. So the next thing we need to have something that triggers them. So I'm going to create a trigger. I'm going to go into triggers here. And then I'm going to drop down the curve. So what I want is as soon as they walk over this curve, I want them to be triggered to a run. I'm going to paint the curve here. So perfect. I'm going to do new out, and I'm going to call that run trigger. Out, run, trigger. And it's always black. Let's go back here, and I need a new crowd trigger. So I'm going to drop down a new crowd trigger. I call this walk to run. I need a new transition. And I need to merge these two guys together. So a merge, and then I'm going to plug it in there. So in here, of course, I need to walk, and then actually it's a walk to run by default. So that's great. So just check this, use clip transition graph. And up here, I'm not going to use object bounds this time. I'm going to use object distance position. And here you can specify how close it is to an object. So let's go in here. I'm going to take the run trigger. The default behavior is distant to centroid. We don't want that. We want the closest point. So closest point. And if it's less than 1, it gets triggered. So let's see what this gives us. Start walking. And you can see that guy got triggered to run, and that guy got triggered to run. Gonna fast forward a bit. And here you go. It gets triggered and run off. Awesome. One thing I'm going to show you, just if you encounter it, I'm going to create an error here. So you can see the transition are all working great, but it can be sometimes if you're changing the speed too much, they can get confused. So let's just try that. If I do the walk and the run speed up to 2, so it's like twice the speed, and then I'm going to go to the end. Here's a perfect example. So you can see that some of them, by this, everyone should be in a run, but not all of them are in a run. And some of them are actually standing still, but they are supposed to be in a walk state. What has happened is that they have been triggered to the walk to run intermediate clip, but because the speed is so high, if we go into the warrior setup, it gets triggered to this walk run idle, but then it just have one window to come out from walk run idle to run, and it just do that on 2 frames. And this clip is not looping, of course, because it's just a transition clip. So what happens is the frame rate is too high on the clip, so it misses these 2 frames, and then it never gets triggered. So in that case, if you are doing these extreme speed ups, you probably need to make this a bit higher. So if I would put this to, now my transition region is bigger, and if we look at this now, oh, I forgot, I need to, of course, do it for both clips, so I need to do it on this one too. So if I do this to 1980, and then do it again. Now you can see that all of them except this guy gets triggered, and this guy I actually think that is because he never gets triggered into that state at all. This is just a problem you get if you go with crazy clip speeds, but if you encounter this problem, you probably need to make bigger transition regions. So I'm gonna go take this back to a normal speed, and I'm gonna also take them. But yeah, so let's do some shading, and here you'll really see why packed primitives are so cool. You can, through material style sheets, even go straight to a shape on an individual agent and make shading decisions. And as you also will see, material style sheets are not that difficult to use at all. So let's get to it. I'm gonna drop down a geometry. I'm gonna call this crowd out. I'm gonna do this .io. A .io lets you select what to pick up from a .sim, and you can also use it to cache your simulation. If you use the crowd shelf tool to create your simulation, this will be created automatically. Let's go in here. I'm gonna select the crowd sim. I'm gonna select the crowd object, and then I'm gonna check this, and I'm gonna have crowd object 1 and geometry. So first of all, let's create a material. So I'm gonna go to material, and then I'm gonna create a principal shader, and I'm gonna make this pink and call it pink. So how can we apply this to the agent? A crude way would be you just go to crowd out and go to render, and then select the material, and then everyone is pink. This of course gives us no control at all, so let's not do that. What we are going to use is the material style sheet. So let's go to material style sheets, and you get that by go and open this data tree and then choose material style sheets. And then I'm going to select this crowd out and add a style sheet parameter, and here I'm going to add a style. So the cool thing, like I said before, you can go down on different levels with these style sheets. So if I start and just do add target, now it's down on a primitive level, which means that you can go down on an individual primitive and do something. So in this case, I can add a condition by set target from viewport selection. I can go in here, I can just select a couple of these guys, press enter. So these agents with these primitive numbers are selected. And if I, on this style, add an override, and here we've got to set the material, let's go and select the pink. You can see that the material only gets applied to these guys. But this is not all, you can go further down. So what we can do, we can just add a sub-target and make a new condition for this guy, add condition. And here we can go down on an agent shape level. So if I select the agent shape, I can say that I just want it on the head, because we can go down on every geometry shape. And I don't really remember, I just remember that head is in there somewhere, so I'm going to do star, head, and star. And now you can see it's just applied to the heads. I can add more, I can say also, oh, I want it on the arms, so I'm going to do star, arm, star. Now it's just on the arms. Now I'm just setting the material straight. We can also go and just change the parameter. Say that I'm going to drop down another style, so I'm going to drop down a second style, and then I'm going to go to add target, it's primitive. I'm going to set the target, I'm going to select this guy here. So he's the only guy that's going to be affected what I'm going to do here. And then I'm going to add a sub-target, and I'm going to use a new condition here, and I'm going to do agent shape, and I'm going to do head again. And nothing happens because I haven't made an override yet. But let's make an override, and now I'm using the material parameter instead. So what parameters I'm going to override? Go to the material here. You can see, is this base color? I want to override that with a different color. So I could just write it here, but I can also go in and just say, oh, I want to go in here, surface, basic, base color. So now I have base color. I could have just typed base color. But if you're not sure, you can go in and do it like this. And it's selecting the pink because that is what the color is currently. But let's select that, and then just select the blue. And now you can see only this guy's head is blue. And it's not, he's using the same material. So you can see if we go into this pink and change other things, like the roughness, you can see that the specular is changing because I'm just overriding this parameter of this material. So let's put some real material to these guys. Okay, so code material, you can see I've created these 5 materials. And by the way, this is way too many materials to put on your crowd, but why not make a really messy example? So you have arms and helmet, the head, and the only thing, all of these, I'm just using the principal shader. I'm going into textures, and I added all the textures that I have. And then I have a normal textures that I also plugged in there. So that's the only thing I've done. So it's nothing strange. I haven't done anything weird at all. To put this into the agents is pretty straightforward. Let's go to the data tree, take material style sheets, and crowd out, add style sheet parameter, make this a little bit bigger. And I'm going to add style. And the first one would be the head. And I'm going to add target, add sub-target, and I'm going to add condition, and I'm going to do agent shape, and I'm going to put default head, which is the name of the geometry, and then I'm going to do an override. I'm going to set the material, and I'm going to set the head. Oh, I misspelled default head. I'm going to copy this 5 times. I'm going to rename this arms and helmet. And this one is going to be body. This one is going to be fur, even though I should actually remove that fur. And this would be staff. And then I just need to go in and change in the sub-target here will be Actually, I'm just going to do star arm, star, star, helmet, star. And then I'm going to set the material to arm and helmet. And for the body, I'm going to change this to default new body. And for the material, I'm going to select body. And for the fur, set fur and fur. And for the staff, just called staff. And I will set this into staff. Perfect. So that was easy. So let us just put in some lights and do a quick render. So first, let's go to a more interesting frame. So maybe here. And then we can put the camera here. And I control shift and click the camera. And then I get the camera in that position. And then let's drop down an environment light. And I'm also going to drop down. I'm going to go up to a good angle here. And I go on here. And just drop down an area light. Same thing, control click, area light. Something like, I need to click this so I can navigate the light. Something like this. I'm going to make it a little slightly bigger. Go up with this a little bit. Maybe go down a little bit. And then I'm going to go to out, drop down a mantra. And here I'm going to select the physical base rendering. Let's diffuse to 1 bounce. I'm also going to go to the terrain and I'm going to turn off the color and I'm going to go and drop something down on it. So I'm going to drop down clay, like so. And I'm just going to make sure. Let's just use a point color. Let's see what this gives us. Oh, I'm going to change one thing actually. I'm going to also go in and put this to ray tracing background and enable sky environment. Okay, back again. So there you have it. So yeah, not very optimized and a bit slow, but I still think you can see the possibilities. So one more example of what you can do with material style sheets. For this I've made 2 texture variations for the warriors. So, and I'm going to use an attribute to distribute them. So if I go to crowdsource, and I'm going to do attribute randomize, and then let's go to uniform discrete, because I can set the step size there. I made 2 new texture variations, so I have 3 in total. So I'm going to put this to 2, and I'm going to call this, now it's setting a color, but I'm going to call this texture. And if we look in the spreadsheet, I'm also going to take down the dimensions to just 1. So now if we look here, we can see we have a value between 0 and 2, but always with a step size of 1. Cool. So let's get out here. You can see I lost all the textures in the viewport. It's just because the viewport is really easy to break. So if I just go to render view and go back, yeah, then we got it back. And I can show you another thing, by the way. If sometimes it gets confused by layer. So now I just have 1 layer with the helmets. But if I go in and add an extra layer here, so the one without helmet, see if it's going to work now. Oh no, it's completely broke. But if we go back, now you can see that it's assigning the wrong shapes with the texture. But if I would render this, it would be fine. So it's just a viewport thing, and hopefully they're going to fix this in the future. So let's go back here, and I'm going to, because this is distracting, so I'm just going to turn that off. So we're just going to have 1 layer, and now it's still broken, but if I just go over, and now it's fixed again. So I have this attribute, and now I'm going to use that. So I go to data tree, and I'm going to do a new style, and I'm going to call this texture 2. I'm going to add a primitive target, and I'm going to add a sub-target. And for the primitive target, I'm going to put the condition that would be that attribute. So if I go to point group, I can set add texture equals 1. And as a sub-target, I'm going to put another condition. And this will be the agent shape, and I will use the body. And now we need an override, so I'm going to add an override. And I'm just going to write over the material parameter. And I'm going to go to textures, base color, and then I'm going to use this texture base color. And for some reason, it doesn't work now. Sometimes you need to close it down and then do it again, and then it's going to work. So now it works. So base color texture, and I get the file path of the old texture, and I'm going to overwrite this with a new texture. So I'm going to take alt2. And nothing happens because I've written the wrong name. It's new body. And now it looks like it's broken, but if I go to render view and go back, and now we can see that we have this color variation. And then I'm just going to copy this, copy, and paste. I'm going to call this texture 3. And I'm going to set the value to 2 here. I'm going to select this alt 3. And now we can see we got the 3rd texture variation. So we have like this brownish, this bluish, and this grayish. So yeah, that's another way. And there's a lot more to do with material style sheets. I'm just skimming the surface here. But I hope that this will get you started. So that's it for this first course. I hope that you found this course useful and you'll be able to kick out some awesome crowd work from now on. More crowd courses will come in the future, so stay tuned, and meanwhile you can always check out my free tutorials at Short and Sweet 3D. See you next time! So, 17 is out, and that is of course very exciting. And what is also exciting is that they have tightened up the workflow, how to create the agent definition somewhat. And that is very nice. So let's see how that works. And I just want to stress that everything in this course, all those things are still valid. It's just that they have made a few things that makes everything a bit easier. So let's see what they have done. So first, let's drop down an agent up. And you can see one thing they've done is, which doesn't really matter, is that instead of scene, they now call it character rig. But I want to use FBX, I don't want to import anything, I don't want to convert units. So let's select this rest pose. So here's the rest pose, and I'm going to call this rest here. So far, so good. Nothing has changed really, but you have a new agent clip stop. And that is very nice, because what you can do in this one, before you just had chops and file as options, but now you also have character rig, which is the scene then, and FBX. And this is very nice, because now I can just take the FBX right in the agent clip stop. And so let's take this clip here, do convert units. I can do everything that I usually do in the agent stop, and I can convert it to in place. I can go up here to the locomotion node and just select hips, and oh, I need to call it something. I'm gonna call it walk. And here you have, if you have different takes, you can select the different takes here. They just take every takes here, but I just have one take, so it doesn't really matter. So let's see what we got here. I have a skinning issue on this FBX. It doesn't really matter, because I just want to pick up the rig. Yeah, I can also preview clips, so I can go here and I can select the clip, walk. Now you see it's walking in place, and I can also apply the locomotion. So all the things that you had in the agent stop before, but it's very convenient to have it in a clip stop. Cool. The next thing they've done is just make it a little bit easier to saving out your agent definitions. Instead of using a ROP, they have packaged it for you. So if you take the agent definition cache, and here, and actually it is, if you go into this, you can see you have a ROP node with an agent ROP in it. So it is the same, what I was telling you about in the previous chapters, but it's just a more convenient node. Here, you can just save it out, and then you can load it back from disk, and now it just picks the first clip with the rest pose. And this is, of course, a much nicer workflow. So a thing that was added to 16.5 is that the agent clip transition graph now can create automatic transitions. So if we look at this scene here where I've used it, is that we have these guys, they start walking, and then they stop here at that grid. So I'm just going to show you how to use it. First, let us look at the agent clip properties I've set up. So I have one clip that I first created a walk loop from, and I also made subclips. So I have an idle to walk, an idle, and a walk to idle. Cool. Let's drop down a transition graph here. So I take the agent on the first port, and then the clip properties on the third. Just by visualizing this now, you can see that it's automatically set up a lot of transitions. And if we look at the spreadsheet, you can see that we have all these transitions. What's going on here is that this node is trying to match different poses and see what would be a good transition point. And this tolerance shows how closely the different poses has to match each other. So just by doing nothing, I have all these transitions. But what you can also see that it's doing all these unnecessary transitions. So for example, I don't want to have a walk to an idle to walk, or an idle to a walk to idle. So what you can use then is this filter function. If I just click plus here, I'm going to do it 4 times. And then I'm just going to go through them all. So I start with an idle, and I just want the idle to be able to go to an idle to walk, and then I go to an idle to walk, and I just want that to be able to transition to a walk, and then I go to a walk, and I just want that to be able to transition to a walk to idle, and walk to idle, and I just want that to be able to transition into an idle. And now we can say we filtered out all those unnecessary clips. So another thing you can see here is that I don't have that many transition windows. I have a lot for the walk actually, but not that much for the idle to walk. And I obviously want to have them to be able to react quickly to the box. I could play around with tolerance, but what I decided to do instead, I use this option here with extra transitions. And when you use that, then suddenly you're back to it always. So I set up this idle and idle to walk, and I did 4 windows, just so I have one at 20 frames, one at 40 frames, 60 and 80, just so they can react quickly to the box.